All right, seeing as it's 6:30, I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 4th, 2020 meeting of the Finance Committee. Tonight we'll be following the published and posted agenda. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions. Bear with me. My agenda has frozen. I'm gonna get creative. Okay, let's try that again. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapters 30A, Section 18 of the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town Chelmsford Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information, the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by accessing the Chelmsford Telemedia website at www.chelmsfordtv.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Chelmsford TV is inviting you to schedule a Zoom meeting. We would like to also remind people, if you would like to watch this meeting but do not plan to present the committee or speak during public comment, we ask that you please do so at live.chelmsford.tv.org or on your television at Comcast 99 or Verizon 37. By doing so, you will help reduce demand on the online meeting platform. Thank you. So, having said that, I'd like to remind also everyone that at the chat feature on the Zoom meeting, both public and private messages will be made public as part of the public record, just as a reminder. First, we have approval of minutes. We have 3 sets this evening, March 5th, March 12th, and March 28th. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion on March 5th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written for the March 5th meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't here.
I'm sorry, who abstained? Anita,
I
you?
did.
Okay, thank you. So that's six ayes, 1 abstain. Do I have a motion for the March 12th set of meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve as written the minutes from the March 12th meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And I abstain. I was absent.
All right, thank you. 1 abstention, 6 yeas.
Thank you.
Finally, we have the May 28th, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve as written the minutes from the March 28th meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
All right, we have 7-0 on that one. Fantastic. Moving right along, we have, looking at our attendees right now, I see that Virginia is on. We do have the review of the warrant Article 11 Town Charter Amendment Board of Health, which is an article set forth by the Select Board. I don't know if you feel comfortable speaking on that, but if you'd like to do so, Virginia, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, was Ken planning to come?
I hadn't heard back from him. He received a copy of the agenda.
Okay. And Paul, feel free to jump in. My understanding when Ken put this forward was that much of the rationale behind it was that the Board of Health has 3 people right now. And so if 2 of them were to have a conversation, that constitutes a quorum, and that sometimes that can make it very difficult to get things organized and done before the formal meetings. And I think he just felt that it would benefit the board if we were able to extend the membership to 5 people.
That pretty much cover it, Paul?
Yeah, I think Virginia covered I think the realization was it was the only townwide board that had 3 members. And I think the feeling is that, 5 may give a little more diversity and more opportunity for as Virginia noted, across, support amongst board members.
Right. And also just bring a little bit more diversity to the board for some of the complexities that they work with.
Okay.
Isn't the assessor board or the board of assessors, isn't that only 3? I thought that was 3.
But they're appointed.
Where this is an election.
Right.
And so what happens when we don't have enough candidates to run for it? Then who would, do those positions end up being empty, or is it appointed by someone?
If there were a vacancy in an elected position, the remaining elected officials and the members of the Board of Selectmen appoint a person to serve until the next annual town election. And that's on any.
And when was the last contested race for the Board of Health? Other than last year? What was the last one prior to that?
I don't recall.
I don't know, Anita.
Probably, maybe I think it was 15 years or so.
Well,
Around now?
if we're going to discuss and debate, we can certainly do that when we vote. So the answer is we don't know. We're not sure. Are there any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Virginia, for pinch hitting on that one. All right. Next, we have an update of the fiscal year 21 budget for the Chelmsford Public Schools. And with us this evening, we have the superintendent of Chelmsford Public Schools, Jay Lang, along with Joanna Johnson and Collins is also here as well. Welcome and thank you for coming back this week to give us a quick update on your.
Thank you for having us again. Am I unmuted or am I muted?
Nope, you are unmuted.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I couldn't tell from the computer. Yeah, we had so much fun last week. We wanted to come back again and have a follow-up talk with you guys. So when we actually came last Thursday, I had reviewed with you the school committee's budget for fiscal 21 that we had originally reviewed back at the end of February. And then obviously on this past Tuesday night, I was going to be making recommendations to the school committee with regard to making a $1.3 million reduction in their budget that would ultimately go forward to town meeting on the 22nd. So I'm back this evening to share with you those couple of reductions that we recommended, or I recommended to the school committee on Tuesday night that they ultimately approved of. And then we did have the school committee vote a new bottom line budget for fiscal 20, because it's that bottom line that's most critical. Excuse me, for the budget book of $61,667,000. 1 second. Sorry. Excuse me. The pollen is getting me. The first reduction that we were recommending in the fiscal 21 budget for next year actually would not have an impact on any programs and services. All of these actually wouldn't, which we think is very beneficial. But when we were this past winter, we were putting together a planning committee to take a look at a new curriculum adoption at the elementary school level for a new literacy program. That work kind of concluded around March when our school closure began. And we had estimated it was going to cost about $750,000 or so dollars for a new literacy program, grades K to 4. So I had budgeted $250,000 in fiscal 21, and that had anticipated trying to utilize about $500,000 in anticipated surplus in fiscal 20 to make that purchase. In the end, after the the literacy program adoption was completed. We negotiated with the vendor for costs of our selected program, and it ended up actually coming in at about $650,000. So we actually came in about $100,000 under what we were anticipating, which we're very happy about. And we were actually able to maneuver the $650,000 worth of funds within fiscal 20 and make that purchase now. So the $250,000 that's actually was earmarked in the fiscal 21 budget is not needed for the literacy program, and that was going to be reallocated elsewhere within the budget. So obviously, we would just take that as a reduction at this point, and it would not have an impact on our programs and services. The purchase was fully completed, but we used fiscal 20 funds. So that was the first one. That was the kind of easy one. The second one that we're recommending is we typically budget for kind of the current year buyback amounts for any employee settlement costs when people retire. Some of our contracts have buyback provisions in them. So what we typically do is we don't know when the year starts who's necessarily going to be retiring at the end of the year. They have to tell us by a date in January if they're going to retire. We're then able to quantify what the retirement amount is. And the practice has always been to basically budget the exact amount in the following year's budget. And then typically in the first paycheck in the fiscal year, so the first paycheck in July, is when we would pay out that expense. But Joanna obviously has quantified that amount. We included that amount in our budget for fiscal 21. And again, we have some excess funds within 20. So we're recommending going ahead and actually just making that payment the last week in June instead of the first week in July. It's an expense that's actually related to the fiscal 20 budget anyway. So we're just kind of moving that expense up this year. In the event, I'm always concerned about moving too many of those expenses into a particular fiscal year and then creating a structural deficit in the following one. This will not be the case with this particular transaction, though, because our history is that we typically always budget in the following fiscal year for that expense because it's unknown what it is going in. So I'm not overly concerned. We're actually kind of prepaying in our estimate this year. Our typical routine would be to get into 21, figure out who's retiring, and then budget that cost in 22 anyway. This may be something we look at in the future if we ever have extra funds at the end of the year, just moving that expense to the last pay period in that particular fiscal year instead of pushing it to the first pay period in the following fiscal year. But this transaction, again, it's about $121,000, isn't going to impact any staff or services in the 22 budget. So we're very happy about that. And then last, I had alluded to this when we discussed the budget last week. I recommended to the committee and they approved of this. We had approximately $1.1 million in savings from our transportation contracts that we didn't utilize since our school closure on March 16th through the end of the school year. So we have bus services for regular ed and special ed students that we didn't utilize. So what I'm recommending doing is actually moving that funding because we can't carry over transportation funds from one year to another, but the school committee is able to, by statute, basically prepay certain accounts. And one of them is special education tuition costs. So my recommendation to them was to move about $960,000 from the transportation account down to special education tuition out of district. We will prepay a portion, and it's only a portion because we actually expend millions on special ed tuition, but we'll prepay a portion in fiscal 20 that we then will not have to pay in fiscal 21. So this is the only area, and I am conscious of this, again, kind of creating a structural deficit that we're going to have to deal with in 22. However, there is so much uncertainty with regard to even circuit breaker, what the reimbursement rates are going to be, if we may receive additional money for circuit breaker transportation, what type of reimbursement we may receive from Valley Collaborative, our collaborative. We're very sound in special ed tuitions at this point, and we actually have maxed out, or we will at the end of this fiscal year, the amount that we're able to carry over in circuit breaker from year to year at right around $3 million. So I actually have a $3 million kind of budget cushion in special education to pay for some of those unanticipated costs that come up. So I feel very confident that I have enough flexibility within 21 to be able to account for this reduction now in the light of potentially 22 being a difficult year. So I am going into this eyes open, knowing what we're dealing with. And that was our third recommendation, to basically add up to the 1,333,000 that we needed to reduce the budget to bring it in line with the manager's recommendation for town meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I'm very happy that you were able to accommodate the number within your budget, and that the students at this point aren't going to be impacted. I just wanted to ask, because you were adding a number of positions,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying anything about whether those positions are needed, not needed, but was there any discussion about holding off on any of those positions for another year, or was there any discussion about that? Because there are costs to the town budget in general when you add new people, and just being conservative. Was that discussed?
We had discussed the new positions and the new programs and services we were actually including in the budget when the school committee deliberated back at the end of February, early March, before our closure. I think the two primary areas that we're adding these services are not areas where I feel we could actually defer a year. I mentioned in the last meeting a significant number or quantity of these increases really relate to special education services and required services that we need to provide under child's IEPs. The big one being the addition of the therapeutic program at the middle school level to accommodate the upcoming kids from the elementary school level. We need a proper program for those kids to be able to attend, or I would really have to shift money in the local budget to, again, tuitions to be able to tuition those students out to an appropriate placement. So that's one that we really can't hold back on. The other special ed cost is at the 3 elementary schools. Again, that's where we're seeing our enrollment increase. And this particular year, just an inordinately high number of students moving up from CHIPS to kindergarten. Those early elementary grades, the K1 grades, need additional special ed teacher support to just be in compliance with the IEPs. So those really are not areas that we could wait another year on. I don't view them as like luxury positions at all, or luxury type items. I really do think they're going directly towards student services, and they're just called for at this point. The second area, in addition to special education, where we're adding a couple of positions, ironically, is within the technology support category. At the middle school, high school, we have a joint position that's going to help support both teachers and students at that level. And then at the middle school, some additional lab support around technology use. And if anything, I could use 2 or 3 times the staff that we have now to just support the remote learning needs that we've had with the students. You know, we got a good flavor for what it looks like this past spring. We're preparing for the next school year. And we obviously need to plan for some contingencies around some level of continued remote learning. And those positions are going to be critical to just supporting students and staff around the different technologies that we're using to enable the school day to really be remote if we find ourselves in that position. So I really, we're kind of muddling by right now with the tech support we have, even with these additions. And if we're in even a partial remote environment for next year, these are really positions that I can't delay on.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
to your point, Kathy, we really did look very hard at this. And, you know, these weren't, you know, kind of wish list positions. They very much were meeting direct service needs for staff and students. They're all direct support positions. They're in direct contact with students. They're not supervisory or administrative. They're all hands-on teaching or teaching assistant type positions.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that was explored
Thank you.
again.
Yep.
Thanks.
Jay, I have a few questions.
Mhm.
Are we prepared if the state comes down and says that we have to have a greater reduction of class sizes? Are we prepared that if we have to hire additional teachers, or because like we're pretty up there with a lot of our class sizes right now, especially at the middle school level. So if we needed to reduce it below 25, they say you can't have more than 25 kids in a room or 20 kids in a room. Has that been discussed?
Yes, internally, I mean, that's stuff we've actually been talking about towards the late spring. Most of our enrollments, even at the middle school level, are still under 25. I think the number that's coming out concerning me at the state level is, they're talking about class sizes of potentially half the normal, so 10 to 12 students. I can tell you there's no school district in the state that's prepared to basically double their workforce of teachers. So if something like that were ever required, the concepts that are really being talked about, and I haven't fully vetted this, and I don't really know if I have full opinions on them, is basically doing either staggered school days. So you only have a limited number of students in the building at a particular time. I've heard of some discussion around staggered school weeks. So you might have like a week on and a week off, and you would kind of divide the class up so that half would go on an A week, half would go on a B week, and that's how you might get to your 10 or 12 students in a school. But again, we're not prepared, but there's really no district in the state that's prepared to like double the size of their teaching force that quickly. I don't think, honestly, in the economic climate that we're in either, that's really a viable option. I think if anything, it's going to be trying to be creative with the existing staff that we have and trying to figure out, how we can do some kind of a hybrid of, in-person learning and remote learning if we have to. There certainly is a lot of conversation again happening statewide where all is not equal. So it's much more difficult for the elementary school students to be doing remote learning than it is, say, the middle school or the high school. I think the high school kids can pull it off a little bit better. It's still not ideal, but they're a little bit more equipped to handle a remote learning environment than our elementary school students are. So, these are things we're looking at also, flexibility in staff, even our teachers or our paraprofessional supports, how we can best kind of maneuver them around the district to provide for the in-person learning if we're in those situations. But, this is something we're certainly working on now. We're going to have some working groups that start to convene right around the middle of the middle of June to take a look at the recommendations that are coming from DESE and the governor's office around the reopening plan statewide. And we're going to take those guidelines and actually customize them to Chelmsford and what we feel we can accomplish for the fall.
Thank you. And then I had another question. So with a lot of our parents out of work still, and a good number of them are not sure when or or if they're going to go back. There were a couple of questions I had that relate to that. One is there discussion with the building principals about limiting the amount of school supplies the kids are going to have to get? The cost can really get crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, it's well over 100, especially when we're not getting the teachers who the kids' teachers are going to be until August.
Right.
Sales are over. So the cost can be well over $100 a kid.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you cut out on me there.
Oh, no, that's...
No, sorry. It can get expensive. And we did have this conversation in our weekly principal meeting this week. What I've asked the principals to do is go back and work with their staff and really try to streamline the request for this year of what's going to be coming out, because again, we're not going to be announcing until August who incoming teachers are going to be. And it's not that we're trying to be mean about it, but we're trying to provide the most flexibility in our scheduling. And we don't want to put out information in June saying, well, Jay is going to have Jim as the teacher, and then all of a sudden something shifts, whether Jim is available or not available or what to be the teacher. So we have communicated that the class assignments are not going to come out until early to mid-August. Again, I've asked for kind of streamlined class lists of, trying to minimize and really have to provide the individual products that people are going to have to bring in. Like if you think about even like at the elementary level, there's a lot of sharing that takes place. Obviously, that's not going to be appropriate with the social distancing guidelines we're going to have to follow. So every child probably is going to have to bring and maintain their own, say, pencil case. They're not going to be able to share their pencils and markers and things like this that they typically do. But again, what I've asked them to do is really kind of strip down the requests to be very specific to what is an absolute necessity. And I've also asked them to, as they're kind of culling together these lists, see if there are things this particular year that as a district we might be able to just do some kind of big buy purchasing on. Let's say it's, single subject notebooks or something like that. I know, and again, this as well, some of these lists get crazy where you have to have like a light green and a purple and and everyone's running around trying to get that particular notebook. So, again, I've asked for some kind of freedoms around that. But I told them also, I'm not opposed with trying to free up some year-end money if we have some. A lot of the different vendors have kind of blowout deals, to be able to buy things in quantity. So if I can pick up, say, a notebook or something like that for the kids, and that way the parents won't have to, we're going to try to do some of that as well. Whatever the very small things that are going to be, I envision like, again, even like tissues. I know oftentimes kids might come and bring tissues in to contribute to the class. Well, we're not going to have kind of communal tissues anymore. So kids are going to have to bring in their own little pack of tissues to use themselves. That kind of stuff will still happen, but you're not going to have those requests to kind of help out the whole classroom because sharing is really going to be difficult. I know I'm being a little long-winded in this, but
No, that's okay.
yeah, we are going to be kind of working on that.
Okay.
And my hope is to, by the end of June, even though the parents aren't going to know the teachers, be able to let them know what the district is purchasing and then what their expectations are going to be. But I really do feel it's going to be minimal this year.
Okay. And then also, you said that there's about so you're using a portion of the 1.1 million in savings from the transportation.
Mhm.
Is the remainder of that going to be used to prorate refunds to parents who didn't receive the busing over the last 3 months?
No, at this point in time, the 1.1, like 962 is basically
Yep.
going to the tuition, but say the other is going to that prepayment of the whatchamacallit, the separation costs. We're basically going to utilize the 1.1 million in savings to offset and better our 21 budget. We have had some discussions around, what to do with the last, 3 months of the school year as far as bus fees go.
Mm.
One of the issues that I kind of get caught up on is the of the 1.1 million, really a very small portion of that. If I had to guess off the top of my head, I'd probably say somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 is actually derived from the parents. The rest is really coming from the local operating budget, which subsidizes the cost of the transportation. If we actually calculated what the true costs for, say, a parent who was under the 2 miles to have a bus pass, it would likely be somewhere in the $700 to $800 range per year. What the true cost it is for the district of transporting that. The 200 is kind of a token cost that has kind of just been the assigned cost since before I got here 5 years ago. If anything, I've actually tried to cut costs in different areas. We've reduced the parking fee at the high school. We actually eliminated that. We've reduced fees for like after school programs at the middle schools and the high school level. So we really have, and I think the committee's been open to understanding that this has been a burden on families to try to free up when we can funds for them. But where the $200 fee is really just a portion of the true amount, I hadn't planned on recommending returning that. I would guess, again, this is just off the top of my head, I have not done these calculations. You're probably looking in the $40 range, per rider for what the potential return would be. And I have not included that. We have just been utilizing that 1.1 to make the budget work for 21. If we were to free up that 75 to 100, we would then basically have to go, make a $75,000 or $100,000 reduction next year.
Okay. And then finally, I watched the school committee meeting from Tuesday, and I noticed that you mentioned that depending on what the requirements are for next year, there is a chance that 7th to 12th graders won't be offered bus services. Is that correct?
Well, no, and I want to be clear on this. That was just something that I threw out there, that other districts are looking at. One of the huge components that is a stumbling block for the whole return to school in the fall is transportation and how the
Right.
students are going to come back and forth. We utilize our buses for multiple runs per day. What is the ability to put multiple kids on a seat going to look like? What is the cleaning going to be required even between runs? So districts are really struggling with this. And statewide, districts are looking at, what is the absolute minimum number of buses we could operate by statute that we have to provide. And we are required as a community to basically transport anyone in kindergarten through grade 6. We need to provide them transportation, but 7 to 12, you technically don't have to. So I just mentioned that to the school committee that I do think we need to kind of convene a group to look at transportation in general. But that is something that communities are looking at. We did approve a fee schedule, the typical one for our K to 12 riders. We're going to start pushing that because we need to actually figure out who is going to still request a bus, even if they, if we can provide the transportation. I mentioned to the school committee, for argument's sake, let's say they ever decided they weren't going to transport 7 to 12, but we've taken the fee for the year for them. Obviously, I would fully refund that. We wouldn't be looking to take on a fee to just hold it from someone and then not provide a service at all. So when we were talking to the committee, I did say, obviously, if we ever changed a policy and then didn't provide a service that we'd taken a fee for the year, we would return that fee. But I want to put that out there that that's not a given. It was just a discussion point. And I think it's something a lot of communities are going to be talking about. So people in Chelmsford will probably hear about that as well.
If that was something that was to happen, though, so from a financial standpoint, you would potentially have the same number of buses. So the cost for running the buses would be about the same, but you would have a lower number of fees coming in.
Right.
Correct? Would so would
yeah.
that potentially put us in a transportation deficit, or are you going to have to increase the fees to the K to 6 parents?
No, see, if the K to 6 parents have to drive for free,
Okay.
so there'd be like no fees coming in. You would basically be taking away the fee students.
Oh, all right. Okay.
But then what would end up happening is, technically to transport the number of students we would have at that point, you wouldn't need 29 buses. So we currently contract for 29. We could potentially contract for a lesser amount. What we'd have to figure out is how many kids we'd actually be transporting, how many we could safely fit in a bus. Again, how you could stagger your runs and stagger your start times to be able to do it in a healthy standpoint. But I wouldn't be able to speak at that right now as far as like exactly how many we could cut down or how many we could run. But
would additional after school programs be offered for the middle school kids, for the 7th and 8th graders?
What do you mean by additional?
Well, so right now the only time that we do after school programs are the ones that you have to pay for, and they're not on Fridays. They don't start until about the middle of October.
Right.
Our working can't get to school kids up 35. Is there going to be some sort of after school program? Because I know for me, I can't have my 12-year-old autistic child walk 2.5 miles every day. It's not going to happen.
Right.
She's too at risk, and there's not sidewalks the whole way to our house.
Mhm.
She would have to cross 3 main roads to get there. So for me, that would be a concern. Would there be some type of after school place for her to go, in the building that isn't necessarily a club,
Right.
or a program like that?
Yeah, again, these are the things we'd have to really kind of put on the table and talk about. I think my first answer to you would be we would have to see through like ComEd what kind of after school programming options they have. Obviously, they have robust programming for the elementary level. It drops off at the middle school level. They don't offer a site at both schools. I believe it's just Parker at this point that actually offers a program, and the McCarthy students that need the program go over to Parker for the program. But if this were even going to be contemplated, these are the kind of things that we'd have to talk about with the school committee and figure out. But I just really mentioned that in passing on Tuesday night, so we have not done a lot of work on this. Before we even got to that discussion, I plan on putting a survey out to parents to just kind of get a gauge of, even who on their own would be thinking of providing their own transportation, even if they previously rode the bus, just because of their own concerns around health or potential, disease spreading, things like that, whether it's on buses or in schools. We need to get some of that information first to then be able to even figure out where we're at. So I'll be mindful of your point. And I would say really over the next probably 2 weeks to a month is when we're going to start to collect data via survey on that to start having some informed discussions.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, no problem.
John, I see your hand raised. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things that I would like to follow up on that Jay brought up. Certainly with regard to the issue of supplies, that was something that we began taking a look at last fall. So that was something that we were already aware of in terms of the extensiveness of the list that were being sent home by teachers. and the burden that it was putting on parents. So we're just continuing our work in that particular area. The second thing is, even if we had to reduce the number of students per classroom, we don't necessarily have the space to add more classes. So, obviously that's something that we're going to have to take a look at. We're pretty full at the elementary level and certainly getting up there at the middle and high school level. So adding additional teachers in order to be able to reduce the class size would not be feasible just for space alone. And then the last thing is with regards to transportation. Part of the reason we did have this discussion at school committee last week, and part of the reason it's been hard to have these discussions is because there's so many things that are unknown. And even in the discussion around transportation, one of the things that we were able to reflect upon is even just making a small change can have a large rippling effect in so many other aspects of what it is that we provide over the course of the day for a student. And we have to be careful not to float too many speculative thoughts out there because we don't have the information at this point, and we don't want to make people anxious about things that may not come to fruition because we just don't have the information at this point in order to be able to make a well thought out decision that we've had a chance to really vet as to whether or not it's something that we want to go forward with. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
Do you have any other questions?
So, Jim, if I may,
Certainly.
Dr. Lang, after last week's discussion, I admit I was very hopeful that we might see a reduction in the headcount adds. I think given the unknowns and what we're dealing with on the revenue side, seeing 10 FTEs added is a bitter pill to kind of swallow. And not to be, I suppose, cynical, but it looks like most of the reductions that you're taking in 21 are really just shifting money from 20. So there's really no net savings. You're just kind of moving things around. So I not so much a question, I apologize for that, more of a comment, but I was really hoping to see some reduction in the headcount. When you add 10 folks that I have to believe, are getting close to $1 million a year fully loaded, that's $1 million a year that goes on pretty much perpetuity when you add people. So that's a gift that we'll keep on giving for a while.
Yeah, I would have to cost it out. These aren't $100,000 positions. A lot of our, even like our tech aid or tech assistant positions in the labs, their annual salary, I'm going to say off the top of my head, is more in the $30,000 to $35,000 range to start. Obviously, teachers can come anywhere between 50 and 60, depending on their credentials when they come in. And these are special education positions, so they're a little bit more difficult to fill. I know you have to add the benefit side, so the number does get up there quickly, and I understand the carrying cost of these year over year. But from my perspective, these aren't positions that the school committee can really afford at this point not to make. And I think if they didn't make the positions, like again on the I'll just bring up that McCarthy Strive program. Like if we don't add those positions, and there were probably 4 or 5 baked right into that particular program, and I don't have a program in the district for those students to be able to go up to in 5th grade, then I'm going to have to shift money to tuitions and actually tuition those students out. And if they end up going out for middle school, they're going to be out for high school as well. So we're going to be looking at a special ed tuition bill for at least 8 years at that point. And once they go out, it is very difficult for students to come back or to get back into the district. At our elementary schools, again, we've had several meetings about this, and we've sat with the principals. We've sat with staff who actually know the students who are moving from one program to another. And our ratios just aren't there. I think particularly, again, we've learned in this remote learning experience, it is very difficult on elementary school students in particular. But I honestly can't fathom what it would really feel like for some incoming kindergarten, 1st grade students. If their experience is even partly remote, it's going to be very difficult. And if we don't have the necessary adult staff to support that, we're really just not setting them off on the right foot. I would agree with you if these weren't, direct service type positions, if they weren't directly serving students and supporting staff members in either remote or in-person learning, maybe we would look at them and see if there was a way to phase this in or even do it over a number of years. But as I look at each of these, and I know it's 10, but as I look at them, I don't see how we don't do without them for next year. And I've really looked very hard at the budget. Obviously the 250 was going to come out anyway, because we were able to secure that literacy purchase. I wouldn't leave 250 in there if we already made the purchase. So that was going to be an adjustment. Yes, the 121 is a shift, but if we didn't have that in 20, I'm sorry, if we didn't have that in 21 to be able to pay, our traditional model had been to pay it out of 22 anyway. So we would just go back to our regular budgeting. The one area that I'm really going to have to look closely at again is that shift in this prepaid tuition, because again, that does create about that $960,000, potential deficit that we're going to have to deal with. But again, that is part of the reason why over the last 3 or 4 years, we've built up that circuit breaker reserve to be able to help kind of level out when we've had these issues and the budgets come. Programming wise, we don't like to see spikes, dips and high points in any kind of like learning year. So we really have over the last number of years, we've added some positions, but we've added some very good services as well that have kept a lot of students in our district. And I truly believe I'm going to be able to balance this and kind of float this out over 21, 22, and even into 23, because we have plentiful reserves at this point, particularly around SPED. I really do feel I'll be able to manage that budget well so that we're not having these peaks and valleys in our budgeting.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the comments.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from too. And I mean, I appreciate the questions. These are things that we've actually talked about internally. I guess I don't view these as things we can put off at this point.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Lane, for being here this evening. Also, Joanna Johnson-Collins, thank you for being here as well. And Donna, as member of the school committee, thank you for attending as well. Going on in our agenda this evening, we have our first round of public comment. And I believe I saw Ken Lefebvre is on and would like to expound upon Article 11 regarding the town charter increase.
I am here. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay. Yeah, just quickly, I know Virginia had spoken before and given a little bit of background, and Paul had helped her with that, and to give you some of the background. What brought this about was just, in my experience in being on a 5-person board, if there is a project or something that needs to be done, and even if you're just checking in with a fellow board member on, hey, this is where I'm at, where you at, are you ready? Is there anything I need to do for the meeting? With a 3-person board, that's considered a meeting. So you run into that issue of, and I think this was already expressed, that 2 people having even just a quick conversation, just checking in, it becomes a meeting. And then it's also the issue of, there's a lot of work to do on some of these boards. And I think, if you have 5 people to divide the work amongst, it's easier than having 3. Now, the downside to this warrant article is that apparently, and most people can see, we have a lot of trouble filling committees. And just looking at the last election where it was all uncontested, if you add 2 more seats, are we going to get good qualified people to fill those seats? So that's the downside that everybody should sort of look at and make sure we're weighing this out. When we do an evaluation of whether this board should be 3 or 5. So I think that's the pro and the con. We have 3 great people on the board now. I think they do a fantastic job. Expanding it to 5, could we attract 2 more great people? Or are we going to end up with 2 inexperienced but could be trained? I mean, that's also a possibility. But that was sort of the driving force, behind this. I know on our board, when one of us is having something in their life that's kind of difficult, or at least for the people to kind of toe the line. And I think that's hard on a 3-person board, or I would think it would be hard on a 3-person board. So that's where that came from.
Ken, did they express a need to expand to 5?
Excuse me?
Did the Board of Health express a need to expand to 5 members?
I don't think they were. I think what I just explained was similar to what I had as a conversation I know Anne Marie's big concern when she asked me why was what happens if you get two unqualified people. I don't necessarily know if I can't speak for them. I don't necessarily know they're against it, but I know they do have concerns over whether you're going to get two more people that are qualified, or you're just going to get, two people that want chickens, so they get on the board to try to change the rules.
So they didn't bring it up, like they weren't the ones that requested.
They didn't. No, they did not. It was more of a observation from going to the meetings, and I did. One of the comments was, well, there's only three of us. Two of us is a quorum, so we can't discuss it outside this room, or we can't really plan other than in these meetings for next meetings. And that's when I thought, well, geez, that's got to be really tough. You can't even, if you have a thought and you want to, bounce it off to make sure it's a sound thought, you can't do it to another board member. That's got to be really difficult for a board, and that's where I came from. So this was not a direct request from anybody on the Board of Health.
But they haven't expressed any of that. That's just your interpretation.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the size of other towns around? Have we looked at what other towns have for how many people are on it?
I think, I'll tell you, I looked at it, this was probably back in November. I went looking at other towns, and I know I saw some 5-person boards. I don't know if Paul, if you're there and you can speak to that a little bit more. I don't think it's rare.
Do we know how many of those boards, though, appointed versus elected? Because we also have a mix out there. If you look at, because I did look into this, there's a lot of towns that the Board of Health, because it's a regulatory board, is an appointed board versus an elected board. And those tend to be, I think, the higher number, is my observation.
Got it. Yeah, that's fine. I can't dispute that, can't support it. Again, my thought was bring it to town meeting, and if people want to debate it, and that's what the town meeting's for.
Does this need a charter change too, or is this just a town meeting?
I think yes, it would. Yes. So it wouldn't go into effect until the charter change, which then, by my understanding, gets voted again. So at this point, I don't think it would go into effect until 2022, if it passed.
Correct. Any further questions? All right, thank you, Ken. Do we have any further public comment?
Anytime. Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any further public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll head into next part of our agenda, a review, discuss and vote on recommendations for fiscal year 2021 budget and the Springtown meeting warrant articles. So, Kathy, I hope you're ready. You become our de facto reader.
Can I just say something? I wonder if we could make a motion before we start on the warrants to waive the readings. Because I think that is something that can be done. Waive the readings, and then for each warrant article, just say the amount. I don't know.
I'm looking at some of them. If I'd rather do that on an article by article basis. If there's a long article we come to and it's very long, I would say we can waive the reading. But there are some that are relatively short that I think we should at least discuss what the article is, especially for people that may not normally pay attention to it. But I'll entertain a motion if you're putting it on the table.
I was just throwing that out there as an idea, but I agree, they don't look overly long.
There's nothing like we had, I think, last go around where there was a four-page article. Yeah. If we come to one of those, certainly we'll stop. We'll pause and we won't exact that upon you. But let me see. I'm going to share, I believe, the slides here. Hold on one sec.
Thank you for sharing them, Jim.
Hold on one second.
Thank you for trying to share.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, don't thank me yet. Screen sharing has failed. Interesting. Try that one more time. Hold on.
Is the share content green on yours?
I'm sorry?
Is the share content icon green on yours?
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, when I went to, let's try this.
Here we go.
Nice, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is everyone seeing a copy of the slides?
Yeah.
I think you've got the preview up though. Do you have like dual screens? You're showing like the PowerPoint preview.
I do have dual screens. Hold on.
Which I guess that still works if.
You're seeing, so you're seeing both the slide and the next slide? Hold on.
Yeah, which is fine. At the risk of breaking technology, I think we should. Oh, there you go.
You're seeing it now?
Yep, you got it.
If you can move the faces that are in the middle away.
You want to be in the middle?
No.
You should be able to do that yourself.
Minimize.
Hold on a second. All right.
See, that's what happens when you ask him to now play with it. It went away.
Ask me to play with it.
The individual user should be able to move the people though. That's a toolbar that each person controls.
Yeah.
Really?
If you see, Anita, if you see us in the center, you move that. Because I saw everybody off to the side.
You do?
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I
okay.
did. When you shared the
Yeah.
screen, I saw everyone off to the side.
And you can even minimize that to make it go away.
Yeah, you can make it go away completely.
All right. So everyone's seeing the slides now.
Oh,
No, I'm seeing you.
we're
No,
back to the people view.
back to the people view.
They should have stuck
It
with
was working.
I try to accommodate people and look what happens.
That's right. We'll figure it out before town meeting.
Yeah, that means in person. What are you talking about?
I meant, we'll figure it out before so we can. vote.
Time-wise. Got it.
Yeah. I was being snarky. Sorry.
Yeah, well, my tolerance for snark has dropped significantly. All right. I think we're going to have to pass on posting the slides. It's just not working. I'm going to try one last time here.
Jim, this is John Souza. If you would like, I can try to share it from my computer because I'm in the office.
Actually, that might be best, John, if you could do that. What's
Sure.
happening with mine is it's unfortunately showing up. It's projecting onto all of my screens.
Okay, one moment.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
John saves the day.
Excellent. Okay, the first article we have is a report of the town offices and committees. There is no action on this as it is just a report. As usual, we'll pass and not vote on this one. Our first voting article will be Article 2, fiscal year 2020 operating budget amendments.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we, oh my God. Okay, here we go. I'm ready. I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 2, that the town amend the fiscal year 2020 operating budget warrant for the spring town meeting by transferring $550,000 snow and ice removal and $121,050 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to the following line items. Number 2, municipal administrative expenses, $20,000. Number 4, public safety expenses, $180,000. Item 6, public works, $60,000. Item 8, municipal facilities, personnel services, $13,650. Item 9, municipal facility expenses, $140,400. And finally, item 16, benefits and insurance, $257,000. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. You can unmute yourselves, or I can unmute you if I need to. Hold on one. David, I'll unmute you. Hold on. Maybe I will. You're muted, Dave.
I'm trying to get on. There we go.
All right, do you have any discussion?
What does this leave in the finance reserve fund? Do you know? Off the top of your head? Or ballpark?
Isn't the, we did the 121 and the one other,
It was 50, we transferred 51,320, the out of school tuition back in February. So that left you with roughly 349 and some change. And now you take the 121 out of that, that's going to leave you with
25 about.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason, you know, that's what it would leave you, you know, to in case anything happens at the end of June.
Between June 22nd and the end of June, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to do this a little different than we have in the past, just to make sure we get the accurate votes and I can report properly. I'm going to call your name and ask you for your vote. Anita? Oh, you're muted. And I'm going to mute from this point on, all the board members, I'm going to unmute.
In favor.
Yay. Kathy?
yes.
Mina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That'll be 7-0. Next article is Article 3, funding for collective bargaining agreements. I believe this has been ratified as of Monday night, Paul?
Yes. Make sure I'm not, yeah, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Selectmen ratified and the unions have ratified. So the request under Article 3 is now known and certain. And
I have the amounts, if that's what you're looking for.
Excellent, Kathy.
The firefighter amount is $201,192, and the clerical and vans is $23,550, and I believe that adds up to $224,742.
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Can I have a motion?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 3. I move that the town transfer a total of $224,742 from stabilization fund for the collective bargaining agreements with the respective town employee bargaining units, the firefighters, Local 1839, the sum of $201,192. The AFCME Local 1703 clerical, $23,550.
Do a second?
All right, second.
Discussion.
Paul, what's left? The police superiors still out there? I know. What other bargaining units are we still working on?
And the public safety dispatchers.
Okay, those are the only two.
Those are the only two.
Thank you.
And Paul, this agreement brings us through which year?
Fiscal year 22. So right now we're in 20, so it basically brings you next year and then the subsequent fiscal year.
Okay, so at least it's not restarting bargaining on July 1st.
Exactly.
Good clarification. Is that also the same time place in the dispatch?
Yeah, the dispatcher's agreement expired almost a year ago, 11 months ago. And so again, we keep them all coterminous.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. I vote yay. Anita?
In favor, yay.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
All right, that's 7-0. Moving along, Article 4 is the Shelby Valley Technical School District Fiscal Year 21 Assessment.
I make a motion for Article 4, but I can't read the amount. I move that the town raise and transfer the appropriate money.
$3,445,195.
From the Neshoba 2021 assessment.
Give a second.
I second.
Discussion.
I just want to say, I hope that they would make, they're formula driven, so they have to meet their net school spending. But I hope that they'll try to accommodate the communities if the, state budget crisis, gets worse or something. I don't know. I just.
Denise, I see Denise Pigeon's on. Denise, would you just like to address that?
Yes, thank you. It's it's a wonderful point, Kathy, and I appreciate that you brought it up. One of the things that I wish that I had mentioned to you last week is that when you look at Neshoba Tech's budget, only a portion of our revenue comes from the towns. So as Paul's also been sharing with you, Neshoba Tech receives direct Chapter 70 funds as well. And as he mentioned previously, there is a likelihood that we're going to see a reduction in Chapter 70 aid. So Neshoba Tech receives from direct Chapter 70 school aid in the governor's proposed budget $3,736,904. So if we are to experience a significant cut from the state, which again, nobody knows exactly what that cut's going to be, what we plan to do, and I can tell you that we had a budget subcommittee meeting last night, and I'll be speaking to the full committee meeting about this on Tuesday night. We are working on several contingency plans so that we would be able to cover that loss of revenue within our own means through making some changes either to the FY21 budget or, making decisions such as what Dr. Lang had been speaking to about as well, so that we don't have to come back to the towns to ask for more money. Because we are very aware and that it is highly likely we're going to have a reduction in direct Chapter 70 and also in state transportation reimbursement. So it would not be my recommendation to the school committee that we come back to you if we do have that shortfall. It will be something that we would handle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are you thinking too 20% like Paul is estimating, or is there any news on that front or any?
I wish there were more concrete numbers available, because it is very difficult to be moving into a school year where we are planning for reentry in this new environment. But no, there is no specific number that's out there. I've heard the number as well that Paul has been using through DESE as well. We've just been hearing that you might want to start planning for worst case scenarios. So we are looking at the worst case scenario of the 20% cut. And that would be about $900,000 for Neshoba Tech. So I can tell you that some of the things that I've been recommending to the committee, we have several retirements, and we're actually holding off on filling those positions until we know more. it's difficult to not fill those positions, but we're doing what we have to do to make sure that we can cover that shortfall if in fact there is a shortfall.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Denise. Do we have anyone else? Any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, if you could please unmute yourself if you've muted. I'm going to vote yay. Anita?
In favor.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
7-0, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Chelmsford Public Schools fiscal year 21 operating budget. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept Article 5, that the town raise and appropriate $61,677,000 to defray the charges for the operating the Chelmsford Public Schools for the fiscal period July 1, 2020 through July 30th, 2021.
Do a second.
I second.
Okay. Discussion.
I mean, I'm happy that we're able to get the budget to where it needs to be without, cutting services. That being said, it's just I'm a little concerned about what next year is going to look like, because we don't know if we're going to need to cut something or add something just with everything that's going on. But I appreciate the fact that Jay and the committee were able to find a way to reduce the cost without having to cut teachers or special ed. The things that they're.
I second that.
Really
I second that, Amina.
Yeah.
I think it's really important what Jay's and the school committee are doing with the special ed, especially in the middle school, because that's where you will lose the students to out of placement, and that can cost the district significant amount of money.
Yeah.
So, I understand that. I mean, all we have to do is look at Andover, which had 24 students going to Landmark and had to, spend millions to get their special ed up to par. I'm a little, I think we're all concerned about what happens the year after, but I think we're all in the same boat across the state. Like, I don't think there is another district that isn't doing what we're trying to figure out now. So that gives me a bit of comfort that it's not a unique problem to Chelmsford.
We're all in trouble. Therefore, it's not an issue now.
Yeah. So
I like that we're able to hire people. I know other towns have done budgets. Other school districts have done budgets where they're not bringing anybody in new. So if someone retires, they're not filling the position at all. Forget about bringing in another psychologist and I think what we have somebody doing ABA. The things that we're going to really need for our students up at the middle school. The psychologist I know at McCarthy, Dr. Steve, is stretched pretty thin. So the fact that we're going to give him a little bit of help, and the psychologist over at Park are going to, because the person's going to go between both, give them a little bit of help so that our kids aren't, sort of floundering while they wait for somebody to have time for them. So,
well, especially in this environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our kids are going to need a lot of help when they get back to school in September.
I think too, on the special ed, as far as keeping the students here, obviously it's a huge cost savings, but there's a huge emotional savings too for the child or person to be with their peers, to be in their own town.
Yeah.
That's a valuable thing.
Well, it is, and a sense of normalcy, so they don't feel like they're being ostracized. Mm-hmm. They get to go to school with the kids that are in their neighborhood.
And I also do think that I think that if things get worse, it seems from reviewing their budget, And I think that they have a little bit of fluidity to make some choices. So I guess good for
I
them.
agree with you, Kathy. Yeah, I don't think they painted themselves into a corner.
And just remind the public, the school committee, the school budget it does have budget line autonomy, and so we're voting an up or down on the recommended amount.
Right.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one general comment, and that is that if you step back and look at what we're doing by the end of the night, we won't have any cuts anywhere in terms of personnel. In fact, we will be hiring people, adding at a time when some percentage in this town is unemployed, and I don't know what that number is, but it's significant. And I just wonder if that comes across very well. And as a matter of fact, when we move on a little further and we get into the capital budget, which is just a little thing, but we're talking about, okay, we're not going to do anything on the roads, and we're not going to do anything on the sidewalks, and it doesn't seem to me like we're facing up to what the problem, potential problem is going to be. And this pandemic may go longer than 1 year. This problem is a multi-year problem. And the budget that we're going to approve is really not going to do much to address that.
So
that's just my opinion.
So to play devil's advocate to that comment, David, a lot of the staff that is in the public school system and the town side as well live in town. And to cut those positions, to cut human capital, to cut the people that work in our town and those positions would just have a negative effect. One person's loss should not be the other person's loss. If we can maintain it in this year's budget, that's great, because we don't know what's going to look like next year. And I think next year is going to be a harder pill to swallow, potentially, based upon what we see coming back from the state, what happens on the federal level, and what the next 6 to 12 months look like. We just don't know. So what we're doing with this budget, both on the school side and also on the general town side, is we're making adjustments that meet projections for this fiscal year based upon current numbers that have come in for available capital and available funds. And then we'll have to maybe make much tougher decisions next year based upon what receipts look like, what property tax look like, and what aid from Chapter 70 and from the state looks like. So although there are no big personnel changes coming in this fiscal year budget, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some in following fiscal year's budgets.
Yeah, well, I want to clarify. I'm not advocating that we have layoffs, okay, at this point in time, but I am a little bit concerned about hiring additional people, okay? And, I think that is where my point comes. And the fact is, I kind of did like the response from the Shova, because at least they were anticipating what they might do. And they were refraining from filling a couple positions until they had a clearer picture. It's too bad. If you look at the total cost structure of this town, most of the costs are fixed, aren't they? They're in people. So it's very difficult to really adjust on a downward way without affecting people. I guess I put everybody to sleep.
We're all frozen. We're all frozen.
No, I'm in David's camp, and that's kind of where I was, the back and forth with Dr. Lang, which I appreciate his position in the school committee, but it's almost like the optics of this just really kind of rile me, that everything's unknown. It's a new world. It's a new day. We're hiring 10 people. It's just trying to reconcile that with what we're dealing with right now. So,
Eric, to the point, I think and I don't know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but the cost for sending students out of district could be more than $100,000 per student. So in a way, if the positions are not administrative positions per se, they're, I think that actually there is a good cost benefit. I agree. That's why I asked about, did you have discussions about deferring those positions? That's why I asked. But I feel like, you know, if the students have to go out and they're going to cost us over $100,000 a year from 5th grade through graduation, then this is actually almost a proactive choice.
Right.
Yeah, I would caution on making a short-term decision without having clear, clear vision of what's going to happen. You're making a bunch of assumptions, and it could end up costing the town more money. We went back to them. We said cut 20% out of your budget. Dr. Lane came back. He did that. He's putting in the foundation to help streamline and save eventually on the budget. I think, yes, we have to be cautious and careful of what happens in the future, but we're also not the only town facing this problem. And usually when it's not just a single town facing the problem, or whether it's a single business or what have you, you'll find that the solution will come out and there will be a path forward. I just cautious on making, too much, like making a bad decision just for the optics, I guess. And not, thinking a little bit more long-term and what's best and where we're going to end up saving, what's going to pay back in multiples.
With the current unknown. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Vicky, sorry.
I was just going to say, with the current unknowns, it's absolutely difficult to be certain how they should proceed. However, I believe that what the school boards have done is necessary, and the additional people seeing the challenges that the students have had in the position that we're in, and from the stay at home, whether it's 50% or 100%, I believe that the additional staff is absolutely necessary. And it has been so difficult for students and teachers, and I can't even imagine for administrators, to balance what we need to do in this last quarter, that I'm actually happy to see how it's proceeding.
If we're projecting a cost-saving measure, I think it's a wise decision. Although optically it does look like an increase in staffing, and it effectively is an increase in staffing. The cost of saving from the out of district tuition reimbursements to other districts may actually outweigh in the long run the cost that we're seeing in the impact in this fiscal year's budget. Again, I'm just going to mention, they have budget line autonomy. So we can talk up and down about what we think about the positions in their budget, but really what we're voting on this evening is the bottom line number. And it has been met. The adjusted number has been met by the superintendent, the business director, and the school committee. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I am voting yay. Anita?
I'm voting in favor.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
All right, 7-0. Thank you. Moving along, next article is Article 6, the general government budget for fiscal year, operating budget for fiscal year 21.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 6, move that the town raise and appropriate $65,814,233.
I'll read the number. I'll read the numbers for you.
Okay.
Transfer $6,000 from the Wetlands Protection Act revolving fund. Transfer $2,336,813 from the Sewer Capital Improvement Fund. Transfer $657,677 from the Sewer User Revenue. Transfer $229,308 from the Stormwater Management User Revenue. Transfer $73,049 from the Cable Television License Revenue. Transfer $46,476 from the debt bond premium reserve and transfer $169,612 from the child care revolving fund to defray charges of the town's government operations for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, according to the following line items. And we're not going to go through the line items. As written.
Second.
Discussion. Do we have discussion? It's a big budget, guys. Can I talk about it all? Trying to pull up a copy for myself here. John, can you proceed through the slides, please? Thank you. Okay, if we can pause here. Proposed fiscal year 21 operating budget, just a certain decline available. The projected 20% decrease, 3.4 million in local aid from the state, 14% decrease of 1.5 million from local receipts from motor vehicles, and a transfer of 2 million for the general stabilization fund. So we're looking at 3.4 million decrease from local aid, 1.5 from local receipts, and a supplement into that projected loss of 4.9 of 2 million. So a 2.9 decrease. Can you go to the next slide, please, John? So we'll look at those adjustments that we Paul ran through last week in the proposed budget. Those have been met. We had discussions and our concerns about them. Did anyone have any further discussion or concerns about where those decreases or increases are occurring?
I have a question. What is the methodology should the state aid come in even bleaker? And what is the process if it comes in better? What happens if there's a significant adjustment up or down? We have a special town meeting, what happens?
Well, we have to have a balanced budget by the time of the setting of the tax rate. That normally is in December. Although this year, who knows? They may let you go to third quarter estimated, who knows? But the bottom line is we have to have a balanced budget by the time of the tax rate. So the first response, Kathy, is we could make adjustments at fall town meeting with whatever the latest information we have available at that time. And that would obviously be the third Monday in October. The bottom line is if we're over, then we're okay. In other words, if the state aid comes in greater than what we forecast, we're okay, because what ends up happening is the town accountant reports the appropriations. We're sort of in a surplus situation, and then things get tweaked. I mean, they would look at items such as that may be overestimated, such as the estimated receipts. Suppose they knock down motor vehicle excise another $500,000 or what have you. So it really isn't a problem if you're over. If you're under, then again, I think you really have to go back and make further adjustments to balance it. Or again, it depends. It really depends on order of magnitude, Kathy. If it's 100,000 one way or the other, then I think the Department of Revenue looks at the variability in items like local receipts and new growth of the property tax levy and the permit fees and so forth, and that sort of get in the overlay and so forth, that sort of gets smoothed out, which is why the tax rate always varies by a penny or so forth. If it's a major structural adjustment, then I think we're back to a town meeting. Again, typically that would be done in October, but we don't know where we'll be in October. As you know, with so much uncertainty in terms of is there a second wave of this virus that comes through. So again, this is the best information that we have, and then we will adjust accordingly, in the future, depending upon what the reality is at that time.
John, can you go to slide 19, please? Thank you. So we're looking at specific adjustments from level service, but which we would normally have. And as we discussed, We've got the replacement police vehicles have come out of that budget at an amount of 45,000, which effectively is one vehicle. The public safety overtime is a big one, and we'll see how that gets impacted in this next year. Overlay account for property tax, debt service and decrease based upon the fact that we're also decreasing our capital budget, and decrease the one-time holiday as it's been characterized of the other post-employment benefits, and snow and ice removal decreases to 500,000. So those are those significant adjustments that we're looking at in this budget in order to make up for that $2.9 million reduction above the $2 million infusion of funds from the stabilization.
The previous slide, John, can you back up one? Sorry, you're making you drive backwards and forwards. So the debt service here is down by 1.1 million. Doesn't the next slide show the debt service goes down by 200,000? What's the difference between those two descriptions? So that
you've got excluded debt service and non-excluded debt service.
Okay.
And we don't have access to the reduction in the excluded debt service because that's tied to the override votes that allow for the debt exclusion. So that sort of bridges that gap.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
I was hoping that was your laptop and not your chair falling over, Paul. So if by some chance we cross our fingers and the state aid actually comes in better as opposed to being worse, so I think you had a 3.4 million decrease. So if that comes in and it's only half of that, again, humor me, but we approve the budget as it's presented. A town meeting approves the budget as presented. What happens to that excess that comes in? How does that does it get earmarked? Does it get set aside? What happens to the surplus?
If it's that significant, then we're back at town meeting having a very interesting debate.
That's a polite way of putting it, Paul.
And here's why, because there's all kinds of things to consider. Because one would be, do you lower the tax levy? Which was going to the point that I think David may have mentioned earlier, is how are we helping out those in the community? Because right now we're taxing at the levy limit. Do you restore capital? Do you restore staffing to public safety? Or you can just see the debates. And do we just put more money into the schools? Because what's their reality of going to Ben at that point in time now that schools have opened? The possibilities are endless, and the time debate may be endless as well, because because I think what you see in all these discussions, and even what the schools have done tonight, there are worthy considerations on how monies can be expended, and they all have merit, and that is going to be the interesting challenge. The problem, though, and this is what I think Dr. Lang was getting at, you mentioned earlier, you don't want to do things in the short term if the realization is that this is really a multi-fiscal year problem, because you don't want to be doing that yo-yoing. Because let's say, whatever it is, you restore X, or you lower the tax levy, but then next year you can't do it because the state aid or the federal aid that came in to help the states is not there. Then all of a sudden you're going to do that yo-yo effect, kind of like Jay was talking about special ed, but now you'd be doing it to the tax levy. You'd have people, you'd be providing relief this year, but then you'd have this huge gap next year where you either have to have an increase in taxes of well over 2.5%, or you'd be cutting services to bring that down to a manageable level. And so that's why I think throughout the whole discussion that we've been having over the last several weeks is we've got to look at this as a long-term phenomenon. And even as John mentioned earlier, is if you're going to take $2 million out of stabilization fund, well, then maybe you ought to put some money back into the stabilization fund in order to buffer you as you go forward. Because if you need another $2 million in stabilization next year, well, now your stabilization fund is down to not even a month's operations of the town. You're down to $7 million or so. So those are the discussions that are interesting. And we've seen it happen in a micro level with the free cash discussion every fall about what to do with the town's free cash. And that's why oftentimes when you have those windfalls, you do it on one-time expenditures like capital improvements or road, such as roads or infrastructure or buildings and so forth, because they're not a recurring cost, and it sort of gives you that opportunity. And clearly here, what we're proposing in totality is we are deferring significant capital investment, not just in buildings, but I can tell you, the public works director has spoken to me at least twice in the last week about the lack of road monies that they have in order to do, what you would see as typical projects. And part of that's being exacerbated by the fact that the state still hasn't released the Chapter 90 monies. And we're in June. And I'm saying, so those are the realities. So anyway, it'll be an interesting discussion, and it likely will occur when we arrive at a town meeting, if there is a significant variance from the revenue forecast to what the reality is. But the other wish thing is, if this COVID thing were to strike again, you could then be looking at what we experienced back a decade, 12 years ago, when the state made local aid cuts in mid-year, and we were adjusting a budget at a March town meeting, and that was the worst experience ever, trying to balance a budget with 4 months left in the fiscal year. So that's what I'm saying. I think what we've got to do is look at it in a long-term perspective, as opposed to, gee, we can nip and tuck here, just based upon the nuances of what happened from forecast to reality.
Thank you.
Any further discussions? It's nice to think we might have more money. Very optimistic of you.
Well, we are in an election year.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. All right. Seeing no further discussion, having a vote on the table, I vote yay. Anita?
In favor.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0. All right. Moving on to Article 7 is the citizen petition for the air quality studies.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept Article 7, air quality studies submitted by citizen petition. I move that the town raise and appropriate $50,000 to fund air quality studies of Chelmsford neighborhoods within a 1-mile radius of the asphalt plants at Oak Street in Chelmsford and Commerce Way in Westford. One study at each location to be conducted when the plants are operating during their peak production season, and one study each for when the plants are shut down. Full and interim reports to be published on the town website without delay.
Do you have a second?
Oh, second.
Discussion?
I feel, I'm likely going to vote against this, although I think like, well, that's a great idea, but I think we don't really have a standing in what Westford does, even though we are affected. And I'm just going to say, like, let's not spend the $50,000 now. I'm sorry.
Kathy, I agree with you on that. While I think it's a great idea, I think there's, we live, Chelmsford's in the crossroad of 495 and Route 3, and we could do a lot of air quality studies in various neighborhoods that, we can, and to what Kathy said, we have, all right, so what if it comes out bad, then what do we have? What do we do? We can't do anything. And I think that they're required to do air quality studies anyways, if I'm not mistaken. So we are getting air quality studies.
The problem I think that they were facing, Anita, and in the presentation, and granted the presentation was back in March 12th to our committee, was the fact that they have made numerous attempts to secure copies of the air quality studies and have been unable to do so, including Mike McCall submitting a FOIA request in order to secure them. They are not forthcoming. And so while they may have been done, The issue is that they have not been presented, they've not been made public in a fashion that they can be reviewed. And the presenter or the author of this article, Jerry Hall, is referencing another vote we made back in the fall concerning development in North Chelmsford at Route 40 that ultimately was defeated, in large part due to a last-second publication and push by Board of Health and unknown parties for the publication regarding the health and air quality in that area. So I think that's what the impetus behind this is, and I, in a normal course, would definitely support getting these studies at least. However, given our current our situation with COVID-19 and the budget that we're reducing, I believe the source of these funds would be the tax levy. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thanks, Paul. I can't. The timing is off, unfortunately. In a normal year, I probably would have supported this, but unfortunately, given the environment that we're in, I'm not sure if I can.
I would have probably
I'm in
supported this
agreement.
if the money was for an attorney to fight them and get what they want. I'm not so sure. Like a air quality study is money, the best spent money.
We tried that the town tried to get itself involved in issues in North Chelmsford regarding the facility up there, and as you saw, that was rather unsuccessful. We were not allowed to proceed in that in an action that was brought by the town of Westford concerning that property.
But private citizens can.
Yeah,
I would.
But that's a private citizen issue. It's not using town funds.
Right. But anyways, I think there would be more. I get more bang for your buck with an attorney than an air quality test.
I guess it depends on what you want the outcome to be. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, I'm voting no.
I'm voting nay.
No,
No,
Kathy was a no. All
I'm a no.
right, thank you. Amina,
No.
Eric,
No.
David,
No.
Vicky.
No.
All right, that's 7 against. Article 8 is the Finance Committee Reserve Fund.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 8, move that the town raise and appropriate $400,000 to be used as a reserve fund at the discretion of the Finance Committee for the fiscal year 2021 as provided in the General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 6.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
We said that so we're lowering the snow removal by 250,000.
I think it was 500,000.
Okay, 500,000. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is where, if I remember correctly, this is where, in case we had a bad winter, we would go and we would have this to fall back on.
Well, this is the Finance Committee Reserve Fund is used for extraordinary and unforeseen expenses that happen in between town meetings. It's a vehicle to take care of those unforeseen and extraordinary expenses without having to convene a town meeting to transfer funds in order to meet those needs. As you saw, we did that back in January, I believe it was, for the special education costs that were extraordinary and unforeseen. When this also acts every year, and when our bond approval rating is evaluated, this is another one of those reserve funds that helps with that assessment. So it's the same amount it has been every year. It's a reserve fund to be used if and when needed, and it returns either for expenditures on budget amendments as we've seen for fiscal year 2020. Also, it's free cash, anything that is in reserve at the end of the year. So it's just a more easily accessible fund in the interim between town meetings, and we vote on that as we did back in January. As to whether or not we believe that the event needs to be paid is extraordinary and unforeseen, it would help alleviate the need to have that special town meeting. Any further discussions or questions? Hearing none, I'm voting yay. Anita?
I vote yay.
Kathy?
I vote yay.
Amina?
Yay.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0. Ken? Fiscal year 21, Article 9, fiscal year 21 capital budget.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 9, 2021 capital budget. I move that the town appropriate $1,472,229 for the following capital projects as presented.
That's fair. I'll accept. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think we ought to put some money back in for the roads, sidewalks.
I see that as a concern too, but I don't know what else what you would cut. So.
Well,
Yeah, I agree with you, Kathy.
Well, take it more out of the stabilization fund then. Take a little bit more money. It'll end up being $100,000 or something when you boil down to the actual cost for the year.
John, can you go to slide 27, please? Thank you. So here's where we had the reductions from what the initial capital, the startup. There's a second page as well. So we have, as you see, the library carpet's been taken out. That makes sense. The fire replacement, the service plow truck, although needed, makes sense. So the 325 and the 500, yeah, that is a big concern. I'm just not seeing what else would take less priority in this particular plan. If you can point it out, I'm happy to agree with you, David.
It's not a question of pointing it out. It's a question of adding it and either taking more out of the stabilization fund or taking it from somewhere else. We're not, I mean, to cut back on really safety issues in terms of roads is not a good decision. It just isn't.
So here's my concern in taking it from somewhere else. First of all, it has to be it's going to be a capital plan. It's usually done with a borrowing, and so it impacts usually up to 5 years plus on our debt service. Also, we have to keep in mind that likely to be, unless I'm happy if I'm proven wrong, a multi-year event, and so taking from something like a stabilization fund would just leave us in a worse position in the next year's fiscal budget. So my concern is we've made these concerted efforts and we're still taking $2 million out of our stabilization and reducing the amount of the stabilization. And now we're looking at a couple of years where we have uncertainty going forward, and we've already tapped into our reserve. So I'm happy to look at discuss other things you think would be a better choice. I don't see them. Doesn't mean they're not there. I couldn't be on board on a take from somewhere like the stabilization fund.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about Paul. Every year we have streets that we vote for the state to recognize. What are we at 100% on that? Could we possibly increase our transportation money by concentrating on getting more streets accepted?
It's not going to be material. We have 230 road miles. I think about 185 or so of those are accepted roads. So the marginal ones that we're doing, we only received $1.2 million in Chapter 90 road money. So it's really not going to be material. We don't have those level of roads that would materially move that needle, bigger number. The problem is the state's underfunding the Chapter 90 funding, and even though you get the lowest gas prices in many a memory, they still won't even touch the gas tax now, even though nobody's driving. I mean, so it's just that you're getting it from all sides, unfortunately.
So since this is,
I'm
sorry, Kathy,
sorry.
go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
Are there any grants that happen for road work? I mean, it just seems like it's a vastly ignored area.
Well, we remember there was, I think, the White House was talking about a stimulus grant to, for road and bridge construction. They're not even talking about that anymore because of the depth of the crisis that we're in. So nominally, that's that's the stuff. Like, for example, the work that you're seeing taking place at Riverneck Road and Billerica Road. That's actually not town money or Chapter 90. That again comes from the federal funding, and similar to the one they're going to do on Concord Road and Boston Road. Those big ones are part of the federal funding, but no, we just haven't seen them provide the stimulus funds that would go towards road construction. Again, who knows what may happen in the future, but I just think this is such a unique event that I don't know we know what will happen. But that would have been one in the past that we saw back in 2008. We did see road construction stimulus, but we're not seeing it happen or any evidence of it so far.
John, if we were to add, I know, just hypothetically, if we were to add back in road improvements, what would that borrowing actually look like for the $500,000 or a number similar to that?
$500,000, John.
I think
I'm hopefully I'm unmuted.
John,
you are.
Go ahead. You are, John.
If we were to add $500,000 back in, you'd be looking at probably $100,000 a year for principal payment and then plus interest. One of the things when I provided information to the Finance Committee last week, I kind of focused on just the savings for the fiscal year 21. And this week I did talk with the advisor that helps us issue bonds. And if going with this lower capital plan, I know that, it's definitely not our first choice, but it's going to provide about $100,000 of savings in 21, but more importantly, in 22, 23, 24. In 22, I'm estimating it's going to save about $540,000. The year after that, in 23, another $460,000. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about seeing the capital cut, but I think that's where it might relieve some budget pressure is 22 and 23. More significant budget pressure. If other things, say in benefits and insurance, go up or whatever, that's where I would see it. But if we come out of this, the coronavirus situation, better in 22, 23, I don't think anyone thinks we will in 22, but if we start to pull out of this a little sooner, that's something that we can look at adding in. But that would be my concern is we're definitely gonna reduce the debt service for the next 3 to 4 years, because based on usually we buy number of vehicles, when you borrow for roads, you're limited under Mass state law. You can only go out 5 years. And so we tend to amortize or pay down our debt service really heavy in the first 5 years on a capital plan. And then it kind of moderates through years 6 to 10.
So assuming that we don't want to, I guess I'm just focusing on the roads and not the sidewalks. So, $500,000 of additional debt service or of additional borrowing, and we don't want to add in the 100,000 and change for debt service for 2021. There's 3 schools that are having kitchen upgrades done for $190,000. Can we cycle those? Do one this year and take the other 120,000 from that to offset partially offset some of that? Do all three of those school kitchens definitely need to be upgraded versus maintaining the roads?
Just to answer Eric's question, the 188,000, that the reason we left that project in is that's to cover overruns for school kitchen work that was already started this year. That's the one that you heard from the school superintendent. He talked about how all the bids came in over budget. So what we're trying to do there is bring those projects to a conclusion. And then the Parker School one for 122,000. During the tri-board meeting, we received some feedback. A number of those things were for code compliance issues. So given the environment that we're in, the school committee and school superintendent expressed that, they wanted to try to solve these problems so they would not be receiving, written documents from the Board of Health, basically saying they need to improve these areas in the kitchen or food prep areas. So that was the main driving reason for putting that in, including that in the capital plan.
Thanks, John. Any further discussion?
Have we ever used all of the $400,000 finance reserve fund? Or maybe shouldn't say ever. In the recent several years, has that ever been exhausted?
It has not been exhausted during the fiscal year. However, it all goes back usually for adjustments at the end of the fiscal year for that fiscal year's budget, and then any excess goes into free cash. So, no. The short answer is we haven't been approached to use the entirety of the fund while I've been sitting on the board, and Kathy has been here the longest.
And also, you can't use that fund to subvert a town meeting vote.
Correct.
Right.
Well, subvert is the right word. But
if the town meeting were to vote this capital budget and not include the funds, this is not an extraordinary or unforeseen situation. And if there's been a town meeting vote in the affirmative to support this plan, so if we were to then turn around and say, "Hey, use use our funds in the interim," that would be a violation of our use of the funds.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm just thinking that.
I know, I get it.
Is it, we kind of already moved on past that vote for the reserve fund in our body, but could town meeting, if we put 500,000 back into the capital budget for roads, could the finance reserve fund be reduced to town meeting by 100 grand and use? It's not a one-for-one offset, I understand, but just throwing out ideas.
Could they vote to do that? They technically could. The problem being is John's discussion regarding the debt service and how that affects other fiscal years. So it's not just a this year impact; it's a multi-year impact. And to do something like that's going to have consequences that go out beyond this year.
So I guess I'm
not saying it couldn't happen. I think
no.
It's been done.
I get John's point. I understand that. It's just that I feel like the roles are reversed, and we're saying make a short-term decision by not hiring 10 people, but yeah, we're going to make a short-term decision and not spend money to maintain the roads.
Yeah,
that's just not compound.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, next year we're not going to fix the roads either. I mean, we're going to have to do it. So we're going to defer the cost to when, and it's going to be 5 years worth of depreciation whenever you do it. Borrowing costs will probably go up over time. I don't know how you abandon your roads. I just don't. But you turn around and you hire people.
Well, again, we have no control over the choices that are made in the budget for the school system. They have budget line autonomy. So whether or not we agree with any positions being hired, the benefits or detriment that might cause, we don't have control over that except for an up or down vote. I get the concern about the roads. Believe me, I have concerns myself, but I just don't see personally in this budget where that adjustment will be made that would make a difference and an adjustment there. But also, I get the ideology behind the multi-year impact. I do hate seeing capital being taken out, believe me, because capital projects are a problem, especially in a situation where we've complained in the past about projects being kicked down, the can being kicked down the road. What's going to happen later on? We have buildings that are far beyond where other towns' buildings are. We have projects that get pushed on a regular. Unfortunately, it's because we have a finite amount of funds that we're dealing with on a yearly basis. The roads I agree, need to be maintained, but a 1 year adjustment in order to keep the more I believe more important. I just can't point to anything else that is still remaining in this capital plan that would be.
Then I just don't know how you make the argument. Then it affects the out years, because if you're only going to not fix the roads for 1 year, then you got to borrow the money next year. Okay, and it's going to be in the capital plan next year, or are you just going to abandon the roads in Chelmsford for multiple years? I don't understand that argument.
So Jim, are you saying from a procedural standpoint that if we add back 500, we're forced to cut 500 somewhere else? We can't just add 500?
Well, first of all, it's 500 over 5 years in terms of depreciation, actual cost. The actual cost, the borrowing costs would, for 1 year, this year's budget would be about $100,000.
But if you heard, okay, yes, that was an explanation by John. But you also heard what the total decrease on the capital adjustment for this year and its effect on the following year's budgets. John just explained that impact going forward, and the problem we're facing, David, I don't disagree with you, but the problem we're facing is we don't know what the next fiscal year holds. We don't know what the next fiscal year after that holds. We can't even provide accurate projections because we're not getting numbers from the state. We're not getting numbers from the Fed. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a situation where we're using numbers on this year that are largely affected by pre-COVID-19 operations. We're dealing with a situation where we don't have accurate funding numbers for collections for Chapter 90 money, for Chapter 70 money, for local receipts, for money coming in from the excise tax. We don't know what that's going to look like next year. So this is a 1 year adjustment to our capital budget, and then we'll have to keep that in a microcosm for our next year's budget to see what the actual impact is going to be. We know what the numbers are because we had 3 quarters where there was no effect. We have 1 quarter which is not completed yet that we're dealing with in preparing this fiscal year budget. So this fiscal year budget and the capital plan that's associated with it is based upon projections, but projections that we don't have a good number for the following fiscal years because we don't know what that's going to look like. And so we're being asked to do a very the town's been asked to do a very difficult thing. The finance department's been asked to do a very difficult thing. Paul's been asked to do a very difficult thing. And we're all, as agents of the town, being asked to project when we have a lot of uncertainties. And so I think it's an attempt at our level best to try to address the concerns we know have to be taken care of, and ones that can potentially be pushed off 1 year, such as the road work. And then I don't disagree that road work has to be done, but it's one of those impact numbers, one of those 1 year impact numbers that could potentially be taken away and have an impact on following fiscal year budgets and help alleviate some of the concerns and unknown projections going into this fiscal year.
I would just add maybe something we could revisit at fall town meeting, because so all you're really losing is this summer's construction, which again, if they would release the Chapter 90 monies, we could get some work done, perhaps the 1.2 million, over the next 4 months. If once we come back in the fall town meeting, we know by that point, the state aid, they'll have given us at least 1 quarter of state aid, or, because they're now doing that monthly. Also, we'll know what our free cash is. We'll know where we are. And if need be, we could appropriate money so that when the weather breaks in April, we could be back out doing some road work with an additional supplemental appropriation during the months of April, May, and June of this fiscal year. So really what you're doing now is you're deferring any work, certainly for this summer's construction season. But again, we could revisit it in fall and then look to see if we could put something in to do this next spring's construction season, which is still within this fiscal year.
Look, I guess we could go all night and nobody's, nobody's going to convince me. I don't think I'm going to convince certain people. Okay, I will vote.
You're probably right.
I believe is correct.
So I would just say, I like what Paul had to say. So maybe when we do whatever the vote comes out, maybe in the book, when we discuss our vote, we could say we're concerned about the road construction because we think that's vital to the town. Something like that.
Thank you both for volunteering to write up a section of that response. That's
well, you know how helpful I want to be.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there was an amendment at town meeting to change the budget.
You're welcome to discuss that in your write-up. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. My vote is yay. Anita? Anita, are you muted?
I'm a yay while we wait for her.
Yeah. Are you a yay or a nay?
I'm a yay. I'm a yay.
Okay. Kathy, yay?
Yay.
Amina?
Yay.
Eric?
No.
David?
No.
Vicky?
Yes.
All right. 5-2. Article 10, Southrow Elementary School partial roof replacement supplemental appropriation. We'll just have to adjust that spelling of replacement.
I make a motion that we accept Article 10. I move that the town appropriate the amount of $116,646 for the purpose of paying costs of the partial roof replacement at Southrow Elementary School located 250 Boston Road, Chelmsford, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto the project, with proposed repair project would materially extend the useful life of the school and preserve an asset that otherwise is capable of supporting the required educational program for the town. May be eligible for the grant from MSBA. Said amount to be expended under the direction of the town manager. To meet this appropriation, the town shall transfer $116,646 from the General Stabilization Fund. The town acknowledges the MSBA grant program is a non-entitled discretionary program based on need as determined by them, and any of the project costs the town incurs in excess of any grant approved by received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the town, provided further that any grant the town may receive from the MSBA for the project shall not exceed the lesser of 50.16% of eligible approved project cost as determined by the MSBA, or 2, the total maximum grant amount determined by the MSBA.
I would have taken an as written, but thank you.
Can you repeat that, please?
No, thank you.
This is why we started at 6:30, not 7:30. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, discussion? We've already appropriated $400,000. It's an additional amount above that amount for the approved project budget. And there's still the ability to seek up to 50.16% reimbursement after the project is finalized. So of that 400,000 initially, we expected up to just over 200,000 in return, potentially. And then for the additional appropriation, we're looking at half that amount potentially coming back after the project is completed. I don't know if the funding for this has been affected by anything that's going on right now. I don't know if it has. For fund projects, I don't think it has been. So this is just a complete on the bid. Well, yeah, it is. Okay, perfect. All right. Any further discussion?
Jim, when you say potentially get back, this isn't the case where you have to get the project approved to know you have the funds coming back. So we're at risk for paying for the whole thing out of pocket.
Paul, do you want to?
No, we're not at risk. They're just requiring us to make the full appropriation.
Yeah.
We've already been approved. The funding is there. In fact, most of the project is already completed. And the MSBA monitors have already reviewed the progress to date. So we're not getting the money.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Perfect. 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have Article 11, the Town Charter Amendment increased the Board of Health to 5 members.
I make a motion that we accept Article 11 submitted by the Board of Selectmen. I move that the town vote pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 43B, Section 10 and Section 7.1 of the Town Charter to amend the Town Charter, Part 3, Elected Town Officers, Section 3, 25 Board of Health by increasing the composition of the Board of Health from 3 to 5 members.
A second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Richard Day, who's just been elected to the Board of Health, has emailed me. He's on the call now. I think he wants to address the board.
He may.
Yeah. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. That's I wasn't sure how this one particular one was working. Yeah, no, I mean, been involved with this particular board, 3-member board, for 37 years, and been involved with the department as much as I could since retirement. And I found that the smaller, close-knit, long-lasting, long number of year membered board is a more efficient, less political scenario. For those that have been around for a while, there has been some requests to do this quite a few years in the past, a couple times in town meeting. Both times voted that it's not broke, we're not going to fix it, kind of thing. So I wanted to reiterate that I think that the 3-member board has been a very efficient process, and that continuing it, I think, would be beneficial. It's one question I've always was asked during my tenure was, how could I stay so long? And the issue was a small, manageable, long-term membership type of board made the job a tenable one that you can stay that number of years, kind of thing. So, and hopefully protected the town like it should be, and particularly where it is now. So,
okay.
Any questions, or
does anyone have any questions?
No, but I'd like to say one thing. I totally agree with what Richard said. I think this is a regulatory board, and we have to be really careful about expanding it. I think it works well. It's not broken. We go through a charter review every decade. If there was a concern, it should be brought up then and there. This could have financial implications for the town. And, you know, to Richard's point, it's not broke. Let's not try to create something out of just for the sake of creating it. I also think it's an interesting board or topic that the selectmen would choose to be focusing on when we're facing, you know, these unprecedented times. We're worried about increasing the size of the board. I thought that was an odd priority for them to be focusing on, to be quite honest. And I just think we need to be very, very careful about making a decision like increasing this board when we don't have people running for seats to begin with.
My other concern with an increase is the discussion that was had in regards to why the increase might be beneficial, to have side conversations being a quorum for a meeting. That concerns me because open meeting law requires us to have our discussions in open meeting. Discussions that should be had that are not in open meeting should be strictly about scheduling, what we're planning to discuss when. And the actual substantive discussions should be occurring in open meetings so the public can be participating in those discussions. So the ease of having discussions with one or two members, I don't necessarily agree with. And so I agree. I don't see a need, and especially where the need hasn't been requested from the actual city to increase this particular board.
Yeah, I kind of agree, Jim. I guess I could see the logistics concerns possibly being the case if you have three people, and again, people have lives to live, that it might be hard to kind of character, to arrange that. But I'm glad that Mr. Day called in, because to your point, if there's not a problem, and to Anita's point, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I think I'm opposed to this.
Any further discussion?
I'm wondering if, I'm sorry.
Yep, Vicky.
I wasn't sure. It looked like I was back on mute. I'm wondering if the current board has any thoughts on how much greater their workload's going to be with the COVID issues. Will there be, exceptional work on top of what they already have? And is that manageable? It sounds like from the gentleman who just spoke that it's manageable and that they believe that it can be handled.
Yeah, I mean, I've been not the director for a period of time, but I have always been in contact with the department itself and how it has been put together. As I was leaving, I was very pleased and with the competency of all the parties that are involved now, and appreciate Paul's help in regards to the rearrangement and other things that have occurred in the department. And again, we can always say, you can always use more, but the department and the board has gone through since, again, my time of 1980, we've gone through a lot of growth in the town, a lot of large issues and whatever. One was, of course, the sewer project and the protection of the water supply, until it got, when the town was 100% septic, and the state was basically ordering us through a process to sewer because of the pollution problems that we had and not protecting our water supplies. So as I said, and we've had the H1N1, we've had swine flu, we've had Ebola, SARS, and I hate to say it, but we've had communicable disease on a smaller scale always. And the board and its members and the department, and of course our relationships with the State Department of Public Health, and also too with CDC. Over the years, I had an excellent relationship with CDC. In fact, during H1N1, I was on the state committee for H1N1, but also too, I was the call number for Massachusetts for any references that came from CDC. I don't know how my name got on it, but it did, that kind of thing. So, but it did, and it was fine until all of a sudden I was getting calls from all over the state. It was kind of like, okay, I'll tell you what I could tell you, but again, bottom line is that the department, the board, whatever, has been very focused on it, as non-political as possible. And that's not always easy, but I think we've always had a good handle on what's important, I guess. And therefore, I agree with some of the members there that I don't see the change, particularly at this point in time. And as was mentioned, that the charter thing that gets reviewed every so many years and whatever has gone through this a number of times, and they just don't seem to find reason or cause to bring it up, and therefore I'm not sure specifically the where and why of what this is about, but bottom line, I just don't see any need for it. So, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. I had just seen in the chat that somebody had mentioned that it was more about a quorum than it was, and I'm not certain who that was that put that in. Did you see that, Jim?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen it.
But thank you for the answer. I was just curious if, in general, you're expecting a lot more activity with COVID and restaurants with regards to the Board of Health.
Oh, there isn't any question about we continue to walk into something new. Everybody's saying, at least from on the personal side over here, why are you doing this? You've had 37 years here, 3.5 previous in another community, and kind of being volunteer and whatever for the last almost 3 years, kind of thing. But bottom line is, it's me. This is my thing, and as Paul knows, I'm on emergency management too. It's just part of what I am and what I do, and I plan on being around one way or another to assist the town as much as I can. So, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be new things popping up. I mean, this whole scenario is new territory, and it'll be very interesting to see what all the information is and how it pops out. So, and what it really settles back down into for everybody to move forward with. But again, as I said, I appreciate it.
Thank you for all that you've done for us already, and thanks for serving.
No, well, the department is it's always the employees. The board has the easier job. I hate to say it, but I'll see firsthand what it is. So,
Rich, just a question, and it's come up in the chat.
Sure.
Have you seen the quorum be an issue in the past?
Have I seen the what? I'm sorry?
Having a quorum for the meetings be an issue in the past?
As I said, I've been off the radar for a while, so the answer would be no.
But so personally, you haven't. Paul, have you encountered anything in your views where they haven't been able to hold meetings because they off the quorum?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. My vote's going to be no.
Mine's no. No.
Kathy?
No for Kathy.
Amina?
No.
No. Eric?
Nope.
David?
No.
Vicky?
No.
7-0 against. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Article 12, fiscal year 21 sewer enterprise fund operating budget.
I make a motion that we accept Article 12. I move that the town appropriate the following sums to operate the sewer enterprise fund for the fiscal year 2021. Personnel services, 1,143,775. Expenses, 2,796,335, for a total of 3,940,110. And that 3,940,110 be raised from the sewer enterprise revenues.
I second.
I second.
Discussion? Three. Can you go to 34? Thank you. It's separate from the accounting financial report of the town. It's its own fund. Increases by 16,988. I see no reason not to.
No, I think this is kind of standard.
Yeah, I agree. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 13, the Myland Avenue Sewer Pump Station.
I make a motion that we accept Article 13 for the Midland Avenue Sewer Pump. Move that the town transfer $350,000 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund, free cash, for the reconstruction of the Myland Avenue Sewer Pump Station.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Second.
Discussion? I think there are some fun pictures after that, John.
Yeah,
I mean, partly there, and that's what they're looking to construct at that location, to have it be a more permanent structure. I think there's been issues with moisture at that location, and that's why they're looking to put the more permanent structure. Not to mention the fact that it's old, needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I think, was it last week, I think, when Gary spoke about this? I mean, I think there's even more photos of this, if I'm thinking. This is the one where they were down in the big hole, right?
No, you're thinking of
that was a different one. That was a break. Yeah, sorry.
No, this is the one we designed. We put the money to design at the fall town meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
So what you're seeing here is an existing over at, my eyes are failing me.
Western Ave.
Thank you. 4 or 14, one of the two, Western Ave, and that's a similar construction that's going to occur at Myland Ave now.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 14, 7-0, Pam. Article 14, fiscal year 21 Stormwater Management Enterprise Fund.
I make a motion that we accept Article 17, Stormwater Management Fund, submitted by the town manager. I move that the town appropriate the following sums to operate the stormwater management enterprise for the fiscal year 2021. Personnel services, $586,446. Expenses, $517,800, totaling $1,104,246. And that $1,104,246 be raised from stormwater management enterprise revenues, and that the town appropriate $200,000 the storm management enterprise fund free cash for the purchase of a catch basin cleaner vehicle.
Second.
Discussion?
Is the reason that this catch basin cleaner vehicle, which just rolls off the tongue, that vehicle is being funded from this enterprise fund versus capital? That's just because we can. It's tied to that specific purpose. We can do that.
It's because it's actually used exclusively for the stormwater program.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Paul.
And by purchasing it from that fund, it's earmarked for that department and for that use. But it'll be accomplishing a needed as people stay across town service, and then also complying with the federal regulations, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen pushed off. So if anyone has any questions for Gary, I do see that he's on here.
If I recall, Jim, this was I feel like it was a lifetime ago when we talked with Gary. This is something that today he is basically hired out, and we're still doing it. We're paying for it today. I think it's even less efficient because there's like multiple people involved.
Yeah, I think both Gary and Steve mentioned that when we met with them and when they came before us back in March, that currently they are hiring it out. They are using a vehicle, and then what they're having to do is they have that one person ahead. Yep. And then they're falling behind, and it is a much less efficient process that's being done right now.
And if you don't mind,
no, of course.
Okay. Yeah, the other reason why it's so important to us is since the MS4 change, what's required now, last year, and this is the second year of it now, we have to take one of our employees and put them out on the street with the current catch basin cleaning company as they do that, because the new requirement was you have to measure how much is in each catch basin, and that's one of the ways that's determines which one have to be done more than once a year. So the two things now is by having our own, it just makes it easier to just put the two people on it and get it done versus trying to chase around people that are not employees of ours. And in the long run, the machine basically pays for itself within about 3.5 years. We'll have it a lot longer than that to continue doing the catch basin.
Can I ask a question about do communities ever share equipment for things like the stormwater? Could you share equipment, like say with Westford, or is that a possibility? Is that ever done for construction? And
more so, you know, we are all part of NIMCOG, which is a organization that we do share a lot with, and where the sharing is more or less done is when you have to take your samples and you have to send them out for tests. You know, we're using labs throughout the whole, I believe it's 9 communities now, things like that for the sharing. The problem with the equipment sharing is who's responsible for the repairs, number one, and then number two, the types of equipment like this particular one are needed at the exact same time through all communities. And then, of course, every town now, or the towns that have more lower areas, and we know of about 4 or 5 right away that we would do regardless of anything, are going to have to be done more than once a year. So bringing in another company to do that is a little more cumbersome than taking out your own vehicle and maybe, you know, 5 drains need to be done twice a year, but 7 need it 4 times, when the rest might only be the 1. So to answer your question, there is some sharing, but it's more on cost savings to everybody by bulk buying or bulk testing than it is equipment.
okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 15, fiscal year 21, form ice rink enterprise fund.
I make a motion that we accept Article 15. I move that the town appropriate $110,000 in expenses to operate the Chelmsford Forum Ice Rink Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 2021, and that $110,000 be raised from the Chelmsford Forum Ice Rink Enterprise Fund revenues.
You have a second?
Second.
Second.
Sorry.
Discussion? Paul, are we all at all concerned about being able to raise $110,000 this coming year?
fortunately, the rink is, closed for the summer season right now. We will have to see what ends up happening, as we go into the fall sports season and obviously winter hockey. Right now, they're only really allowing youth to use indoor facilities. So that might be okay for us because those are our predominant users out there. So we'll just have to wait and see. Again, it's run by a management contract with, much like the golf course. So if it's just prorated, then it really won't. It's not like we'd incur expenses that we wouldn't have offset in revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 16, the Chelmsford Forum Ice Chiller. We are taking no action on that item. It's been removed. Article 17, fiscal year 21, PEG access and cable-related enterprise fund.
I make a motion that we accept Article 17, submitted by the town manager. I move that the town appropriate the following sums to operate the cable, television, public, educational, and governmental PEG access enterprise for fiscal year 2021. Personnel services, $402,885. Expenses, $199,575, totaling $602,460, and that $602,460 be raised from the cable television licensing revenues.
Second.
Discussion? That was a pretty straightforward presentation, and I'm glad to hear that they haven't seen an impact, at least yet, from the quote-unquote cutting the cord phenomena.
Yeah.
Plus, if they did, we wouldn't be here right now. So
You've been incredible for support.
Certainly, the whole staff over at Totality has been fantastic in adapting and providing the meetings in the manner that they have, and I applaud them for adapting so quickly and being able to do this and provide this service to everyone in town. Seeing no further discussion, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay. Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Mina?
Kathy.
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 18, Chelmsford Telemedia computer servers.
Make a motion that we accept Article 18, submitted by the town manager. I move that the town transfer $20,000 from the cable, television, public, educational, and governmental PEG access enterprise fund free cash to expand, upgrade, and or replace computer servers that are used for the permanent storage of governmental archive materials for the CHSTV video production.
Do a second.
Second.
Discussion?
I think another relatively straightforward, although not an annual one, but my understanding, a recollection of when this was discussed is it's basically just memory. we need more space.
Yeah. They did not anticipate the amount of space that they would need in archiving all these meetings, especially now ones like these.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay. Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 19, fiscal year 21 golf course enterprise fund operating budget.
I make a motion that we accept Article 19, submitted by the town manager. I move that the town appropriate $30,000 in expenses to operate the golf course enterprise for fiscal year 2021, and that $30,000 be raised from the golf course enterprise revenues.
Very second. Thank you. Discussion? Pretty straightforward.
Well needed right now. Absolutely.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita,
Yay.
Kathy,
Yes.
Amina,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Vicky.
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0, Pam. Article 20, annual appropriation of departmental revolving funds.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 20 submitted by the town manager. I move that the town authorize the following total amount of expenditures for departmental revolving funds for the fiscal year 2021, which have been established under the provisions of Chapter 35, Section 6 of the Code of the Town of Chelmsford,
I'll
as
read it,
listed. As listed.
As listed? Okay, that's fair. Do I have a second? Second?
Second.
Discussion?
What's the senior citizens trip program?
What it is it's a revolving fund, meaning when they used to have trips, people would put money to pay the trips. It would go through the fund and then it would be dispersed by the trip. So as you can see, at one point in time, they had a considerable amount of activity with trips. This year, it's probably going to be negligible, but that's what it is. It's just basically it's a funding vehicle to collect money and then pay the expenditures for the service.
Trying to get a free trip to Florida, Dave?
No, I was thinking of getting some roads fixed.
It's not an appropriation. It's
not an appropriation.
I know that. It was a joke. I apologize.
Geez, David, stealing from the senior center. I don't have to tell you.
Some more coffee.
I'm qualified. I'm sorry.
No. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita,
Yay.
Kathy,
Yes.
Amina,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Vicky.
Yes.
Thank you. Article 21, Cemetery Improvement Development Fund.
Make a motion that we accept Article 21 submitted by the town manager. I move the town transfer $50,000 from the sale of graves and lots to the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund.
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I did hear from David Boyle today. He would like to increase this amount to $60,000. And the reason is obviously the main bulk of this activity has to do with the Pine Ridge Cemetery expansion. But he also needs to install a niche wall at Pine Ridge because the two initial niche walls that are there at the cemetery are now at 85% capacity.
Wow.
So he's asked that and there's plenty of funding in the account. So it's because again, this comes from the sale of lots and graves, and they've been busy with that. So there's over 90,000 in the fund, but he's asking to appropriate 60,000, not the 50 as was originally requested.
Okay. Can we have amended motion, please?
I would amend the motion to indicate 60,000 rather than 50.
Second.
Discussion?
Straightforward to me.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yes. Yes for Kathy.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 22, Community Action Program Fund.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Article 22, Community Action Program submitted by the town manager. I move that the town raise and appropriate $10,000 to fund the Community Action Program established under Article 12 of the warrant for the April 29, 1996 spring annual town meeting to provide matching funds for community improvement projects undertaken by individuals and or organizations within the town of Chelmsford.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, I vote yay.
Yay.
Thank you, Anita. Kathy?
Yay.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 23, Cranberry Bog Dam Tree Removal and Maintenance.
I make a motion that we accept Article 23, the Cranberry Bog and dam and tree removal submitted by the town manager. I move that the town raise and appropriate, excuse me, 25,000 to the fund the removal of the large growth trees and brush along with other maintenance of the cranberry bogs and dam located off Elm Street.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none? I vote yay.
Yay.
I'm sorry,
Yay.
Kathy, yay. Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. Article 24, Community Preservation Fund, fiscal year 21 debt service.
I make a motion that we accept Article 24 submitted by the Community Preservation Committee. I move that the town hear and act upon the report of the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal 21 year budget, appropriate 140,000 from fiscal year 2021 Community Preservation Fund open space, reserve 140,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Preservation Reserve, 140,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Community Housing Reserve, and 242,060 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the payment of the fiscal year 2021 debt service. Appropriate the fiscal community 21 Community Preservation Fund revenues 50,000 to meet the administrative expenses and all other necessary proper expenses of the Community Preservation Committee for the fiscal year 2021 and reserve the future appropriation amounts for the fiscal 2021 Community Preservation Fund revenues as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. 140,000 for the acquisition, creation, and preservation of open space. 140,000 for the acquisition and preservation of historic resources. 140,000 for the creation, preservation, and support of community housing, and 200,000 for the Community Preservation Fund fiscal year 2021 budgeted reserve. All of the monies in the Community Preservation Fund shall remain undesignated until further recommendations by the Community Preservation Committee and action thereon by the town meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Annual debt service. Seeing no further discussion, I vote yay.
Yay.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0. Article 25, Community Preservation Fund, preservation of historical records, vital records.
I make a motion that we accept Article 25 submitted by the Community Preservation Committee. I move that the town appropriate $450,000 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the preservation of the town's vital historic records.
Second.
Discussion? We saw this presentation back in sort of February, I think. It's already earmarked from funds that are in a reserve fund that can only be used for that, for those specific things. This is one of them. It's not as if we're taking it from, or we're not raising and appropriating this. We're not taking it from the reserve. This is coming from the Community Preservation Fund, and it's earmarked for such use. I see no problem with proceeding. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Mina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you all. 7-0, Pam. Article 26, Ledge Road and Oak Hill Road easements for roadway purposes.
I make a motion that we accept Article 26 submitted by the Board of Selectmen. I move that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire the following land parcels and/or rights in land parcels for the purpose of obtaining a secure public right-of-way to allow for the construction and roadway safety improvements at the Ledge Road and Oak Hill Road intersection, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire these parcels or easements through any and all means available under the general laws of the Commonwealth, including without limitation by donation, purchase, and/or eminent domain. The subject parcels are currently identified on plans drafted by the town of Chelmsford Department of Public Works dated February 1, 2020, entitled Proposed Roadway Grading Drainage Easement Ledge Road.
Second.
Discussion?
What was the, John, sorry, can you go back one slide? What was the amount that we had on this one?
There is no appropriation under this article.
Is it simply allowing for the easement? The amounts will be based upon assessments and the evaluation of the property in order for any compensation. Although I believe from discussions previously that it's going to be de minimis based upon the value of the lands and the portions that are being taken. Is that an accurate statement, John or Paul?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. 7-0, Pam. Article 27, Boston Road and Concord Road easements for roadway purposes.
I make a motion that we accept Article 27 submitted by the Board of Selectmen. I move that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire the following land parcels and/or rights in land parcels for the purpose of obtaining a secure and public right-of-way to allow for the construction and roadway safety improvements at the Boston Road, Route 4, and Concord Road intersection. And further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire these parcels or easements through any and all means available under the general laws of the Commonwealth, including without limitation by donation, purchase, and/or eminent domain. The subject parcels are currently identified on plans drafted by Howard Stein Hudson, Inc., dated March 16, 2017, revised through December 6, 2019, entitled Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Highway Division, Boston Road, Route 4, at Concord Road, Chelmsford. Preliminary right-of-way plan.
Second.
Discussion?
I'd just like to say that would be a great spot to be improved.
You mean you don't like trying to take a left out of there?
Exactly.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more complicated. Do we know how that acquisition is looking, and if there's going to be any issues with that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. That's moving along. In fact, they're getting ready to bid this project next month. So this is going, and again, this is the final step. We need to secure the easement, so they would have bid it this month.
Perfect.
Our meeting. So this is all set to go.
Perfect. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yeah. Yay.
Kathy?
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky? Yes. Thank you. All right. All right, that ends the regular town meeting. Next on our agenda is the article for the special town meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the warrant article for the special town meeting submitted by town manager. I move that the town transfer $710,411 from the sewer enterprise fund free cash into the fiscal year 2020 sewer enterprise fund operating budget that was voted under Article 11 of the April 29, 2019 spring annual town meeting for the purpose of paying for the cost to repair a sewer force main break adjacent to the Southwell pumping station.
Second.
Discussion? These are the pictures you were talking about, Eric.
Yep.
It's about 20 feet down, and they had to build a shaft next to it to pump out the water in order to do the work because it's so far below the water table. It was a Herculean effort, and luckily they were able to repair it the way they did. And luckily, when they get down there, the main was in better shape than they probably anticipated. And that the joint there, it was the only area that had to be really rectified and corrected. It's done. It's coming from Sewer Enterprise. It needs to be paid. I have no further discussion on it. Anyone else?
When something like this happens, this is just a curiosity question. So, this breaks. We have to obviously fix it right away. This thing cost whatever $790,000. Where does that bill get paid up and before we do this?
It gets paid from, in this case, the sewer enterprise fund operating budget.
Okay, so
that's why we got to appropriate before the end of the fiscal year so that we don't close the year in a deficit. Because if we were actually going to close the enterprise fund into a deficit, it would actually get leaned onto the property tax levy the subsequent fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
No one wants that. No,
we don't want that.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I vote yay. Anita?
Yay. Yay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amina?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Thank you. That ends our review of the warrant articles and also the special warrant article. And I'm just pulling up my agenda, which is closed on me here. Give me 1 second. All right. Next on the agenda, we have a review of the schedule. We have a discussion of the plans, the budget warrant, book preparation, review, and production. So we're in a kind of interesting timeline situation. Luckily, we've been able to power through, and it's only 9:23, which I think, even though we're kind of cheating with the 1 hour earlier start, is probably the earliest we've gotten through one of these discussions in recent memory. As far as getting the book done, and we're on a tight schedule, Pam, can you speak to when the absolute latest date is for the printer?
Yeah, I just spoke to them today, actually, and I told her I'd get it to her as soon as possible, for next week. Basically, Monday is already 2 weeks out to town meeting. And the other thing she said that was she was expecting John's budget book also next week. So the two projects are going to come in kind of at the same time, which ideally ours would get in first, and because it's the smaller project. So anyway, basically next week, and as soon as you can get the letter, I can get out a draft to people tomorrow.
Well, the letter's not coming tomorrow.
So I can send out the draft like without the letter, and then
Please do that.
the letter.
The good news is, with voting this way, I know exactly how we need to approach for additional information on a couple of the discussions. It's a shorter run through. If anyone wants to add any additional information or discussion at the beginning regarding our unique situation and the adjustments to the budget, any concerns, any prefacing concerns we may have, or any discussion that we may have had regarding not only the impact for this year, but the following year, please feel free to type that up and reach out to me. Given our shortened timeline, I would like to see those by Sunday night if possible, just so we can get those integrated appropriately and effectively. And then we can look at getting this book out and over to Pam, because as soon as it's in PDF form, it can be uploaded to the website, and then it has to be produced. So I'm not overly concerned about having it available for the public. It will be available in PDF form, but getting the paper versions out, I want to make sure that they're available by a week prior to town meeting, so that people that do still want to grab the paper copy and venture over to the town hall, which is open, can do so, and in preparation for the June 22nd town meeting. All right. Lost my agenda again. All right, there's no further discussion on the schedule or plan for review and production. Next on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak during public comment? Just make sure there are no hands being raised. Hold on one second. I am seeing none, nor am I seeing any press. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Just raise your hand. Aye. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, everybody that's come this evening. Town manager, town finance director, any department heads that are coming with us. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing everyone at town meeting in a new and improved situation on June 22nd.
Thank you.
I won't
Thanks
see you
all.
at town meeting. Have fun though.
Oh yes, we won't see you, Amina. Take care.